Welcome to Talkin' Waukesha, the podcast where every conversation springs to life.
I'm Andrew Nofke.
And I'm Anthony Terrell.
And we're your hosts for today's journey into the heart of Waukesha.
Whether you're a local or just passing through, join us as we explore the stories, people, and hidden gems that make Waukesha truly special.
From community events to personal anecdotes, we're here to bring you the pulse of our vibrant town.
So grab your favorite beverage, sit back, and let's dive into another episode of Talkin' Waukesha,
where every conversation springs to life. Welcome back to another episode of Talkin' Waukesha. We're here with the director of the Waukesha Public Library, Bruce Gay. Welcome.
Thank you.
So start off, can you tell us a little bit about your background and what made you want to be a librarian?
Sure. Well, I was actually an English teacher, and I was teaching in a school in Milwaukee area. And one of our projects every year was we took our classes down to the Central Library in Milwaukee, which is a big library, and it has all these resources. And so our project was always about Dickens' England. Kids would do research on life back in Dickens' England, and they do a project on that. And what was really cool about that was that they would say, I want to look at this magazine from 1876. And they'd pull the magazine up from their basement in Milwaukee.
Oh, very cool.
You know, because they had all this old stuff. It wasn't microfiche, no. And I remember one year thinking, this looks like a nice job that these people have here. So I went and I talked to the librarian there, and she said, sure, we'd encourage you to go to school. And so I did, and was lucky to get a job in Milwaukee, was there for quite a while, and then moved over here in 2017.
So what is your favorite thing about the Waukesha Public Library then?
I always say it's the staff, and I was thinking about this, after the parade, the day of the parade tragedy, we had about 400 people coming to the library for shelter, and they were there until the all clear 5 or 6. And I remember coming in the next morning and thinking, I want to look at the schedule and see who was in here. And I remember at the time I thought, we are so lucky. We had such a good crew in here that yesterday afternoon. And then I looked through the rest and thought, I don't see a group of people that I would say we didn't have a good crew here. And so it really made me think, we've hired well for a long time from before I was there. And we try to continue to do that. But we really hire for people who want to be working at the library and like working at the library and like working with people.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Every time I've been in the library for either doing a video or just going in there for myself, the people there have always been so happily contagious. And they're always just such a delight to work with. There's really not, you can't have a bad person.
And we're lucky, it's not unusual for someone to be there 20, 30, 40 years. So people clearly like it.
Yeah. And what's great too is, like you were saying, the contagious positive attitudes of all the employees. As libraries go, you go into some libraries and it's definitely, dead and dusty, but there's never a dull moment inside of the library. There's always people, there's always action. That the community really appreciates it and utilizes it well.
Yeah, no, it doesn't have that very stereotypical type of library,
right?
But for a good way.
Yeah, right.
It's not the shushing librarian sitting in the stacks.
Everyone's mean and don't talk to me. No, anyone is there to help you to help at any time.
So we just talked a little bit about how the library exists now, but what does the future of the Waukesha Public Library look like?
That's a good question. I'll say a few things that I don't think it will look like. I don't think you'll come in 20 years and there won't be any books. There will still be books. So we're still seeing great circulation of our books, and people really like coming in and seeing. We have about 250,000 items in the library right now, and I don't see that really changing. What I think we'll see more and more is as our efforts to reach into the community keep paying off, I think we'll see more people in for programs, and I just see a real growth trajectory for us. We've come back really well from COVID, and the community has really responded well to our renovation and the programs we're doing. So that's basically it.
Yeah, I think especially during COVID, a lot of libraries were pivotal in keeping people sane. I think is the right way, almost the right way to put it. It's like figuring out the right way to reach out to your library, get those books to either delivered or picked up in a safe way. And, there's still plenty of people like, it's going to go all digital. Everyone's going to have their their ebook of choice. But I think, there's still tons and tons of people that would prefer to have that physical book, mark up their book. And
yeah, and that's not to say that ebooks aren't doing well. We see, growth every year in the circulation of ebooks at the library and e-audiobooks. In fact, it's it used to be DVDs, we couldn't keep them on the shelves, and now it's ebooks. So the hold lines for those and the demand for ebooks and e-audiobooks is unbelievable, and it's a real challenge to meet that need.
Yeah, I think I popped onto Libby, and like some of the most popular books are, up to 10,000 deep for some of these holds, depending on which library circulation you go through.
And it's of course that's a state system collection, so it isn't just Waukesha people trying to get those, but we do have a lot of people like them here too.
So you were talking about too, like how the library is having a whole bunch of, you guys are increasing in your programs and just the things you offer. So what kind of resources does the library offer then currently that people aren't really aware of, or maybe that you wish people took more advantage of?
Well, we have we've added a lot of different things in the last several years that are kind of fun. We have a board game collection now that was new a year and a half ago, which has been very popular. So you can come in and check out a board game. Board games are expensive, and if you end up not liking it, it's like, wow, that's a lot.
Right.
So that's been a popular collection. We also we don't actually circulate these. We just have a sort of a give and go program for jigsaw puzzles, which is it's been surprisingly popular that people love to come in and get a puzzle because, again, you do the puzzle once, you're done with it.
Yeah.
And so you might as well, then you bring it in, give it, and get another one back. And so it's been great. We've also had a lot of popularity, and probably people who know this hope I don't say it, but we have these Explore Passes, which get you into different museums around the area. And so they're very popular with the people who know them. So for instance, a Zoo Pass will get you and your family into the zoo with free parking for a day. And it's a cute little children's animal backpack that they come in. So it's been a really popular thing. So there are a lot of things like that. And then I'm surprised people still don't know, but that we have ebooks and e-audiobooks. I get that question a lot. I wish the library had that. Well, we do. And then, I think it's still new enough that our makerspace is not super well known, but that's been very popular with people who know it. So we have a Glowforge laser cutter. We have 4 or 5 3D printers, a recording studio, not quite as nice as this one, but pretty nice, and a lot of other things there. And that's been very popular for people too.
And if people want to take advantage of these resources, how do they go about it? Checking out one of these passes or using the makerspace.
It's you go online, look at our website, check the library catalog out, come on to the library, ask about it. All of these things, we're happy to help you. Or give us a call.
And what's the URL for the website?
WaukeshaPublicLibrary.org.
All right, perfect. That was one I did not remember off the top of my head.
I remember that.
Like, is it W2PL? No, I don't know.
No, and I think something too with especially the makerspace and why it's so, just I don't want to say not well known, but why people don't take advantage of it too is I think we all know like 3D printer, you need to pay for the filament to go into that, or the Glowforge, you need the resources. There's so many things where it's like, oh, I probably have to pay for that, so I can't afford it. But you don't have to.
Exactly right. Yeah, that's a good point. And we have a nice model for how we work with these is you can sign up for a class on, say, a 3D printer. And in that class, you learn how to use a 3D printer, and you make yourself a 3D printed badge. And we say, oh, you're badged now for the 3D printers. And what that lets you do then is set up an appointment to come in and use it on your own time. So you get the expertise, the filament, the 3D material is free to you, and we teach you how to do it. So it's really kind of a one-stop shop.
Yeah.
And we had stopped in there for a leadership program through the city. So the city hosts a leadership program for employees to help them lead from wherever they are inside the organization. But we have alumni events, and one of them we had around Christmas time was, come in and decorate some gingerbread men that were made out using cardboard cut out with the Glowforge. So we got to see it in action and, see how it works, and kind of, we kind of helps us also be, advocates for the program. I mean, I think that's a resource that I haven't seen too often in many libraries where they have that kind of creative maker space. I mean, there's maker clubs and organizations more, but not so much inside of a a library that's free.
Yeah, more and more you start to see them around the country. We were lucky with our renovation and support from the private foundations and different people that we were able to put something like that in.
Mm-hmm.
So what programs and events are coming up in 2025?
Oh, we have our regular slate as always. Coming up will be the big summer reading program. Do really well with that, and that's for all ages, even babies, kids, teens, and adults. Now we have summer reading program for. Then, of course, we will have Waukesha Reads, the citywide reading program. It's our 19th year. The book has not yet been released, the title of it, so that'll be coming out in June. We're looking forward to another successful year at that. And one thing that we're doing a little differently this year is we are starting a program to reach out to local book clubs and offering resources for book club members and book clubs to have more successful book clubs, or if they're stuck not able to know what books to read. So we're trying to set up a program to reach out to book clubs. So if someone is in a book club and listening to this, go to the library in March and we can talk to you about signing up for a book club hub list.
For the summer reading program, is there a theme that's been selected yet, or announced?
There has been. Now I don't remember what it is. It's the state has a program every year. They set up the and so everybody in the state, every library in the state follows that, and we'll get T-shirts based on that, and there'll be all sorts of decorations and graphic for that. But I don't know what it is. I think it's like space or dinosaurs or something. It's always it's a kid thing.
Honestly, if it was space dinosaurs, that'd be even better. But
that'd be great.
And that usually kicks off with Buckner Fest.
It does, typically. Exactly. That's where we kick it off, and then really going strong in June and July. If you're a parent and you're listening, your kid, it's the Waukesha schools will probably be hearing about it in April and May, because we usually hit every school and talk about summer reading programs. So they can bring home the information then and come and sign up.
Great. So, kind of leading into that, what if someone doesn't have a library card? What do they need to do to get a library card and get ready for that summer reading program?
All you need to do, come in, bring in some ID that shows your proof of residence and who you are, and we can sign you up. So anybody in Waukesha and Jefferson counties can get a Bridges Library System card. We are a member of the Bridges System, which includes every library in Waukesha and Jefferson counties. So the great thing about that is if we don't have a book and you see that it's at some other library, we can have it brought to our library and it'll be there in 2 days for you.
I want to highlight too. It's not just the city of Waukesha; it's Waukesha County.
Correct. Exactly right. Yeah.
And I think that sometimes too, that's also a little misconception, where it's like, oh, I don't live in the city; I live right on the outside. But no, it's all Waukesha County.
No, all of Waukesha County. So come one, come all. We're happy to have you.
And if you live outside those areas, are there ways that you can get a library card or use the library's resources?
Oh, sure. So if you're in surrounding counties, you can come into the library, and with your system's card, you can generally use the library. So we have a reciprocal borrowing with most places.
Great.
Awesome. So does the library take donations, and kind of what does that process look like?
Yeah, we do. We get donations all the time. We actually have right next to where people return books inside, there's a donation bin. So we'll get all sorts of things, books, DVDs, CDs, and we look at them. And if it's something we want to add, we'll add it to the collection. Otherwise, we give it to the friends of the library, and the friends will sell these things and then give the money to the library to support our program.
That's great. And then do you take, books, DVDs, games, puzzles, things like that? Is there any?
We do. Yeah, we take some things. It's always the joke in libraries that people use us to kind of get rid of their old collection of mildewy National Geographics. So, we don't love that. Sometimes, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, right? But understand that we're not going to add everything you give us to the collection, but we'll try to make use of it, and if not, we'll have to get rid of it.
As long as it's a good, healthy for everyone to use state. If it doesn't, smell, give people the ick in any way.
Right.
And even then, you can only accept so many copies of Harry Potter.
Yeah,
that's right.
And I'm sure so many people have turned that in. It's like, all right, we got enough at the library.
Enough. Yeah.
So what other outreach programs does the library offer for people that maybe shut in their homes or just need some other help that they'll
we have a home delivery program. So for people who are stuck in their homes or unable to get out easily, you can sign up for our home delivery program, and we will bring you library materials every several weeks. We also have outreach to senior living areas like Avalon Square, so on, where the library will bring out a series of books and people can choose from that. And then as far as outreach, we have a really strong program with the Waukesha schools, where we have several employees that are frequently in the schools talking about library programs. We've recently done some library outreach to laundromats in the area because it's kind of a population that may not have library cards quite as much. So we're working on that. So we're always trying to grow our outreach. It's a matter of where are some people and what do they want and how can we help them?
And I remember seeing pictures. You've got a not necessarily bookmobile, book bicycle.
A book bike. Yeah, that's right. It was a United Way grant several years ago. It's an e-bike, and it has a big crate in the front, and we'll fill it with books and a laptop where people can check out, and we'll take it to different community events. So in the summer we use it. Obviously, we're not using it right now, but in the summer we use it all the time to go to different parks, and we'll meet with kids in parks, and it's a really nice visible. Oh, there's the library. Look at that big thing, and it's a big machine.
Yeah, I mean,
luckily it's an e-bike.
It's an e-bike. Yes.
You say if the first time I saw, I'm like, okay, it looks like a traditional like ice cream bike basically,
it does.
but
yeah, exactly.
Having a mobile library that isn't like your traditional bookmobile basically.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, that is really cool. All right, mixing up with some fun questions now. Doing a big switch. What is the most adventurous thing that you've ever done, and would you do it again?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this. When I was in college, I did skydiving.
Okay. Yeah.
I would not do it again.
No.
Once
was enough.
Yeah. Well, I was young and less worried. I broke my foot doing it, so I was like, well, maybe I won't do that again.
Yeah.
Was it fun until the broken foot?
Yeah, it was fun. I guess.
As much as terrifying and fun it can be.
You don't really. The first time, at least with this thing, you don't pull anything. They have it all set up, so you just fall out of the plane, and then hope you land correctly, which I only kind of halfway did.
Yeah,
so that was the problem.
Were you in tandem with someone, or were
you
still
on your own? Yeah.
Oh wow,
just a pressure system that once you get to a certain altitude.
Yeah.
No, it was just a line hooked to the plane.
Oh, interesting.
And so they push you out and it opens a chute.
That's a good way to do it.
I did skydiving once, and
you?
wasn't tandem. But of course, the first time I did it, I was like, I'm going to go all out. So I didn't do a tandem, but I had to pull my own chute, and it is terrifying. But they do have a system on it where once you get to a certain altitude, if your parachute isn't out, it'll just throw it out.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, no, I wouldn't do it again either.
Yeah. Perfectly good plane. I'm not jumping out of it unless it's an emergency.
Yeah, right. I did it once. Yep. You can say you did it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. So if you could instantly become an expert in any skill or hobby, what would it be and why?
Well, I was thinking, honestly, I would like to become fluent in another language. It's funny, you ask that question, you think like, well, that's something I could have worked at to do, but I just haven't done it. But if I could do it instantly, sure, I'd do it. So it makes me think like, oh, maybe I should work on language because it's not like it's not like, oh, I can learn to fly. It's like, this is something I could do. Why don't I do it? So, maybe this podcast will inspire me to learn language.
Is there a couple languages you have on the list of ones you'd want to try and learn?
Oh, just a traditional. I'd like to know Spanish. I studied German in high school. And so, those kind of things, like I have a little bit. Oh, there's a start there.
Yeah.
So what is the most unusual or interesting job that you've ever had?
Well, one of my first jobs, this might have been my first job outside of being a paper delivery kid. During high school, I worked for the Cleveland Metro Park Zoo every day. So I was a zoo cleaner, which basically involved getting there at about 6 and cleaning up. I wasn't official enough to go into the stalls and clean. It was more of cleaning the garbage cans and things like that. But that was an interesting job because, you knew that if you got to an area early enough, if you're the first one there, you would almost be guaranteed to get peacock feathers that day because they're all over the park. And they, the feathers were just all around first thing in the morning. So it was like, oh, that was kind of cool. And you heard the animals all day and you talked to the guys who were doing the other work. It was interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And did you grow up in the Cleveland area?
Yeah. Yep.
was gonna say humans are animals in themselves, so
Yeah,
you were
yeah,
definitely
that's
still
right.
cleaning up after animals.
Yes, that's a good point.
And so that was 6 a.m. that you'd be getting there. So you get
Yeah.
there, crack it on, and then
Yeah,
work
yeah.
through the afternoon. And
Yep, then head on.
yeah.
And then were you allowed to keep the peacock feathers?
Oh,
if you
yeah.
found them? Okay.
Mhm.
Wasn't sure if you had to turn them in.
No,
or
and
if
they sell
were,
them in the gift shop. No,
Yeah, stuff like
no.
that. Okay, that's really cool too.
What's something about yourself that most people might not know?
Well, relatedly, growing up in Cleveland, people around here don't necessarily know that I'm actually a Cleveland Browns fan, which is a long-term sad
I
thing
can
for
say
me.
I get it as a Bears fan.
Oh.
I fully understand it. The other side of the division, but having a very similar experience.
Yeah, like just a sad couple of decades here.
Mhm.
So that's been something, I don't share that a lot.
Yeah.
What job other than your current job would you love to try?
Yeah, I'm glad you sent me these questions beforehand so I could kind of mull this over. And for this one, I had no idea, but I thought, well, it would be interesting. There's an opening now, so maybe being a Major League Baseball announcer for the Brewers.
Yeah.
It would be fun to try.
Mhm.
I don't think I'd be very good at it, and I think it would get kind of dull after a while. So I give those guys and Bob Uecker credit because day after day doing this job, that's really something.
You say you got 3 hours of content that you're talking constantly about roughly 11 the same players every time.
Exactly.
Being able to keep it. Yeah, I think that would be a good challenge. But I imagine if you reach out to Park Rec, they can maybe give you an announcer gig at some of the youth sports every now and then. Or,
Yeah, there you go. That's a good idea.
You see, you don't have the topics as easily of
No, yeah, don't have
Well,
that.
Joey's at bat. He's
It's had a hard year this year.
Yeah, you got to make up your own filler
he's
content.
1
Yeah,
for
that's right.
300. What book, movie, or TV show are you currently enjoying?
Yeah, the book right now that I'm working my way through, I'm almost done with, is an old book, Little Big Man. It was made into a movie in the early 70s with Dustin Hoffman, and it's a story of a guy who grows up in the West, 150 years ago, and has kind of shifting allegiances between Native Americans and the white culture. It's interesting, and it's an old book, so it's kind of a little weird. But the TV show that we've been watching, and I would say I've been enjoying it, my wife has been hating it, has been Severance, which you might have seen, this Adam Scott.
Yep.
Yeah, where he has a separate work life from his home life, literally in his brain, because he can't remember one of the other. So it's been interesting, but my wife just hates it. So
Yeah, it's one of those platforms, Apple TV, that I haven't been able to get on yet. But I keep seeing that show, and I'm like, it sounds really interesting.
You keep hearing fantastic things about
Yeah.
it.
it's very interesting. Definitely science fiction-y kind of stuff.
Sure,
Yeah.
yeah.
Is that kind of your go-to for books as well as that science fiction sort of things? Or?
Books I really just kind of look for some review that sounds interesting, and then I'll grab something. So, I'll try to find something older, like, I've never read that. I'll look at that. I'm not a big bestseller list kind of person. So, a lot of times I'll read bestsellers, but it'll be 5-7 years later. And it's like, oh yeah, that's what everybody was reading back then. But I just kind of read all over the map.
Yeah. I kind of imagine as the director, you kind of have to be a little more eclectic with your selections.
Yeah, maybe.
And then with books, especially books that are being adapted to TV or movies, do you try to stay away from them? Or if you do watch a movie or TV show that's based off a book, do you try to go into it with a fresh mind too and be like, think of it as its own thing? Or how critical are you on them?
Oh, I guess the classic is Harry Potter, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So I read all the books to my kids when they were little, and so I enjoyed them. They were fun and thought they were pretty well done. They're great.
Yeah.
And then watch the movies, and it's like I didn't have to connect it to the book at all. It's like these are great on their own. And they were pretty close.
Yeah. That I think Harry Potter is one of those
Yeah.
series that has been very close to source material.
And I've never been a person. I know some people in my family be like, oh, they didn't include that scene. It's like, I don't care.
Yeah. Although it sounds like the TV show, they're trying to reboot everything. They're going to be a little more honest, or not honest, more
faithful to the
faithful. That was the word.
Okay.
Yeah,
material.
faithful to the source material.
Or are they making a TV show? The whole
I
thing?
believe it's HBO is working on a series now. So it'll be segments of it. So instead of like, oh yeah, you only have an hour and 2 hours to keep people's entertainment. It's now let's just do 40-minute installments and
Oh boy.
Well, something I always thought that books should never be adapted into movies because there's no way you can get a 300-page book into an hour. A TV shows make perfect sense. Each chapter is an episode. If it's got multiple volumes, that's a season.
Right.
Like the series of unfortunate events, the newest TV show. Not it was
it was a movie first. Yeah.
That did it the right way of let's break the books into a couple bite-sized chunks. Anyway, you get everything. People accepted it pretty well.
Well, and there are definitely movies that are better than their books. Like famously, The Godfather, the book. I don't know if you've ever seen it or read it. Book is kind of a trashy novel. Sure. And then they make this amazing movie out of it. So it was like, it's like source material that was just sort of inspirational, but the movie's a totally different thing.
Sure. A lot of the James Bond movies as well.
All of those probably,
I've tried reading those books and this is not quite as exciting as watching Sean Connery and Pierce Brosnan shoot their way through different countries. Action in books is tricky.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what's a classic or well-known book that you've never read? I know you said you don't like to read the bestsellers, but is there one that that it's like,
Oh, there's so many that I haven't read. I was an English major, so there are all these books in the canon, as they say, that I've never read. One I recently read, finally, after all these years, was Frankenstein.
Okay.
I didn't think it was all that great. But then the one that I know that I always joke about with is that no male has ever read, and I haven't read either, Little Women.
I've watched both movies, but I've never
read it. And so that's the classic book that I haven't read, not really that interested in.
Have you read, the joke with our, through growing up, you always get these reading programs like, oh, you get so many points for reading these books. And there's always that big number one of Atlas Shrugged.
Nope.
Never read that one?
No.
Yeah, that one's a daunting one. I think it's something like close to 2,000 pages or something like that. And it's not a small book even.
No, it's not.
It's not like it's, your mass publishing printing book. It's a big old full print 2,000 pages.
Yep.
Are there any books whose popularity shocked you, either good or bad? I suppose.
Yeah, I thought about that. I think both ways, good and bad. Like, so shocked. I think something that doesn't interest me much at all are the series, like a James Patterson kind of again and again and again. And so am I shocked? I just think, because it's not something I'd be interested in. But I do recognize people like that, and they're well crafted, and there's an excitement to them, and so that's great. But boy, I'm just not interested in that at all. So how is that popular? How is that continuing to be popular? Because we get dozens of those every time. But then I'm also happily surprised sometimes when something that you just wouldn't expect sort of comes out, and you're like, oh, how did this sort of obscure thing become popular? There's a series now, and I made sure to write down the author's name, Toshikazu Kawaguchi, and he's writing these books that started with Before the Coffee Gets Cold, and they're kind of charming, a little mysterious novels set in Japan, in Tokyo, and so it's like, but those have been fairly popular, which is kind of a that's kind of a sweet little thing that
is it like a historical kind of twist to it, or is it just like modern?
There's like I'm gonna probably mess it up, so I apologize for messing this story up. But people go in to this coffee shop, and they get the coffee, and then they can go back in time to some point in their lives or something like that. So they're kind of they're kind of memoir sweet, interesting little books.
Yeah. Almost like just flashbacks, like while you're enjoying your beverage.
But you can also change things. So it's kind of again, I apologize for the people who love this book because I'm sure I'm butchering it.
That's still a very
oversimplification.
Yes, that's what I do.
Yeah. So how do you like to unwind after a long day of work?
Well, it's stereotypical of me, but I do go home and I read. So it's nice.
Do you have a guilty pleasure book?
That's a great question.
Yeah, I know. I didn't write. This wasn't our list, but as you said that, I could definitely see. It's like, oh, maybe you're reading a book, and it's like, oh, I want to go back to something. Like for me, my guilty pleasure. Well, I don't even know if it's guilty pleasure, but like I will always read Ready Player One over and over again. Yeah. Just because of how nostalgic it can be, but also futuristic at the same time.
Yeah, I would say the book that I always talk about, that I've always said, if I have to say my favorite, would be Motherless Brooklyn by Jonathan Lethem. And it's this story, and it's set in the 80s. And it's this detective agency where the head of the agency in the first scene is killed, and the narrator then is a guy suffering from Tourette's, and he goes to solve this thing. And it's Lethem is a really creative writer, and this book is funny and kind of plot twisty, but it's not too long, so that's always a nice thing too. They made it into a movie, and they set it way back in like the 50s, which is a different twist on it, but it was interesting too, because then they could put all the the different cars and all the kind of cool stuff back from the 50s. And in the book, they had that this character loved music of Prince because he thought that sort of hit where he lived and he could understand it better. And in the movie, then they made it the music of Miles Davis, which I thought, that's kind of interesting how they did that.
Yeah. So is it more mobstery than in the movie? Then?
Yeah. Okay. It was fun though.
So when you read books, do you read one at a time, or do you have multiples that you kind of go through?
Yeah, I kind of, it's typical that I'll have an audiobook that I listen to while I'm driving. Then some fiction that I'm really working through, and some nonfiction that I'm kind of dipping in and out of.
And when you listen to audiobooks, do you listen at 1x speed, or are you able to listen to it at faster speeds?
1 1/4.
1 1/4. That's usually my bread and butter too. It's like 1 1/2. You start losing information a little bit too quick, but
yeah. And when people say, "Oh, I do it at 2," I'm like, I can't believe it.
I saw that you can start listening to YouTube videos at 4 soon. Like that's their newest feature. I'm like, why do you need 4 times speed? But I'm like, if you can process information that quickly, you can get through a book in no time. So if you could time travel, would you rather go to the past or the future? And then either way, how far back or forward would you want to go?
It just opens up. You don't know. I guess I'd go past. It would be interesting to see some of the stuff you read about or hear about. Like, how far back? Where would I want to go? Where and when?
So you had said earlier that you had class projects where it was going back to Dickensian times. Would you want to go back that far, or just visiting and then
just
go
visiting?
somewhere else?
Yeah, I don't want to be stuck in any of those places just because of the healthcare.
Yeah, that's fair.
So go back. I kind of check in on what was it really like, or what was really happening there. I don't know. I don't have a great sense of exactly where I go. Future would be, you'd be kind of like rolling the dice then, right? So like, do you want to go in the future? Are you sure you want to see what's going on?
Yeah, you do it bit by bit. You do 5 years, 10 years, and then see
the direction.
Yeah, and then once you get to a comfortable spot, you're like, all right, let's not go any further before it's all destroyed.
Yeah, right.
I feel like that'd be a good way for the past too. Of like, all right, we're gonna go 50 years at a time, and then just see how everything is until you get to a point. It's like, all right, I think I've seen a lot. At some point, it's just like everything is gonna be roughly same-ish.
Right.
Sans evolution and colonization.
Yeah. So now, if you could go back in time and tell your younger self, some words of advice, what would you say?
I was thinking about this morning also, and I think I would just try to say something like, hey, you should remember now, try to enjoy the people and places you're with right now. Like, make sure you appreciate who you're with, because they may not be there for a while, and this is what you're here for. That will be it.
Yeah.
So while we're reminiscing on the past a little bit, so libraries have changed a lot during your career, I imagine. Are there things that libraries used to do or have done earlier in your career that you miss now? And are there things that are better now due to those changes?
When I started in Milwaukee, this was, I am older, so I was 1997. I started in Milwaukee Central Library. And at that time, we had a service. They still have a service called Ready Reference. And at the time there, it was all done from a room, the Ready Reference room. And they had in there this contraption that they had built themselves. And it was 2 large circular wheels laid on flat. And they were like lazy Susans. And you'd had buttons that you could move them one way or the other separately. And they were filled with books. So they had all the reference books. So you knew where everything was. And so there'd be 5 of us in there. And, library opens at 9 o'clock, phones start ringing. Pick it up and someone would say, there was a recipe in the 1957 journal for macaroons. Can you give that to me? And you'd have to go find it. And we knew that, there's a recipe file. So go over there and you look it up and you pull it out and you would read that. And then you would hang up the phone and they would ring again and they would say, who is in the movie that was just on TV yesterday. It was about this guy and this girl, and they were in a war. And so you'd have to look, and so you just answer question after question after question.
Google before Google, basically.
Google before Google. So it was really a charge because you would have 2 hours and you didn't know. As soon as you hung it up, something entirely different would come.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd move the wheel around, you'd get things, they would say, oh, what does this acronym stand for? And so, I've got to find the dictionary of acronyms. So you'd move the wheel around. So that was really fun.
Mm-hmm.
And once you got good at it, it was really a fun time. But more than 2 hours and you were done.
I imagine it gets a little overloaded. It's like, okay, I've learned, anything from how to prepare macaroons to, the entire plot of.
Right. And it was the kind of thing where you would answer a question and the next question, and if someone said, what did they just ask you before? You'd say, I have no idea.
Yeah.
It's completely gone. It was just so episodic. It was such a funny way to work. It was really a charge. So now, of course, that wheel has been retired. They took it down and took it out, and they put 5 computers in there.
It's not nearly as fun.
No, not nearly.
No.
But
That does sound really fun. One of the things I just love is just having random knowledge for just things that don't really matter.
Yeah,
and I feel like you would just be full of so much knowledge.
Yeah, there was a book there. Now that you're saying this makes me think of that. Well, there's one book that was like how Milwaukee streets got their names.
Mm-hmm.
And you get that question fairly often, like, why is it named this? And you'd go pull out that book and you'd say, well, according to blah, 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 it's this. But another one was famous horses. And it was just
everywhere famous horses?
Like, Alexander the Great's horse, George Washington's horse, Lone Ranger's horse. And it was just, it was crazy that there was someone who wrote a book on this.
Yeah.
and you would get questions on it, not unusually.
Does there happen to be a book of how Waukesha streets got their names in the...
Not that I am aware of.
Okay. Because I know there's been times I've been driving, so my wife and I frequently, well, not frequently, we spend a lot of times when we're at a cemetery looking at the names and stuff like that. And at Prairie Home Cemetery, there's a lot of names that are there that are also names of streets.
Yes.
So that's one like, okay, it'd be nice to know, like, Gaspar, for example. I think I know who he is after a tour we took there, but how do those two names connected?
Now there are certainly Waukesha histories.
Mm-hmm.
That would probably tell you just about all you need to know about that.
I would imagine. There's a really great book I found online. It is an 1880s collection of Waukesha County histories of sorts. So it's, documenting who's living where, what people think of as when they're moving out to the counties, why they moved out here.
Yeah.
One of my favorites is I tried moving out to Milwaukee from Pennsylvania, but Milwaukee was too loud and drunk for my liking. So I came out to Waukesha instead. Love it.
Yeah, that's great.
So the Waukesha Public Library is supported by a group called the Friends of the Library. What does the organization do, and how does someone join if they're interested?
Yeah, so they are a wonderful group of people, and they support the library programs, and they work to raise money to support the library, and then they give us money for programs. Last year, they gave $10,000 for Waukesha Reads, which let us buy 1,700 copies of last year's book, which was Mexican Gothic. Mm-hmm. We're able to remember that. That's good. And they support us through all sorts of things. So a lot of programming things. Our Jamboree program that we worked with the Parks Fund, they supported that. And just all sorts of different events. And it's easy to join the Friends. You can do it either online or you can come to the library and fill out a form. But online, there's a link on our webpage, waukeshapubliclibrary.org, for Friends, and you can join right there. And they also, one of their big events is the Culver's Night at the Main Street Culver's, and that is Wednesday, the third Wednesday of each month. Next Wednesday. So if you go to the Main Street Culver's next Wednesday, you're supporting Waukesha Friends of the Public Library.
And that's the one that's over by Woodman's?
Correct.
Okay. For whatever reason, when I think of Culver's in Waukesha, I think Sunset first, and I always forget about the one on Main Street.
Well, and it's sort of on Main Street, but it's easier to say next to Woodman's.
Yeah. So what is your favorite piece of trivia that you've learned during your career?
I don't know during my career, but I was thinking one sort of interesting thing we do every year. If you go to the library and you check something out, you get a receipt, you'll see you saved $15 by checking this book out because the book would have cost you $15. So instead of paying $15, you saved $15. So in 2024, Waukesha residents on the whole saved over $15 million by using the library.
That's fantastic. And is that just the physical books that are
physical books, CDs, DVDs, the physical items?
Okay, so not the digital,
not the digital stuff. No,
that's still amazing. Of the actual savings.
Yeah, but so that it could be more with the digital.
It would be more with the digital, definitely.
Yeah. So who has been your biggest mentor or influence in your career?
Probably my first library director at Milwaukee was my biggest mentor, just because she was a wonderful person and really personified good service for the customers.
Mm-hmm.
And it really made a difference to me, like, oh, so this is how it's supposed to be. Like, but then I think about influences, and two readings I've done that I always go back to, I think about for libraries. And one was a NEA study called To Read or Not to Read that came out in about 2008. I could be wrong on that date. And it talked about communities and reading, and showed all sorts of connections between communities that read a lot and all sorts of positive outcomes. So it makes sense to everybody that, communities where there's a lot of reading done, the kids in schools are going to do better, which makes total sense. But they showed all these other things too. So communities that read a lot are much more likely to be economically successful. Communities that read a lot, people are more likely to volunteer. Communities that read a lot, people are a lot more likely to vote. But even then, some funny things that you wouldn't expect, they're more likely to go to plays. They're more likely to exercise. They're more likely to participate in community events just by reading a lot. So I keep going back to that. Here's an important role for the library. We really value championing reading in the community because there's so many positive outcomes from reading for a community. And then the other one that came out much more recently called Palaces for the People. This was a book by a sociologist, and he created this concept that he called social infrastructure. And social infrastructure, he said, is the kind of infrastructure in a community that connects people. And so what he did was he did a study of, there was a heat wave in Chicago in the 90s, which was fairly deadly. A lot of people died in it. So what he did was he took a look at two different communities that had a lot of very similar demographics. So they had, similar poverty levels, similar ethnic makeup, so on. And in one of the communities, the rate of death was much higher than in the other. So why did that happen? And so what he found was that the community with the lower death rate had so much more of this social infrastructure. So he was able to say, like, they had barbershops where people met. They had, choirs. They had church groups. And what he really said was they had libraries where people went. And his idea was, and the idea of social infrastructure was, because they have connections with each other, they're able to say, hey, I'm worried a little bit about Maggie over there. I haven't seen her for a while. I'm going to go check in on her because they know her from other things.
They see it face to face and interact
so it's really important for library. And we have all these meetings and programs and so on. And you think, like, is that really the role of a library? Well, it is to build social infrastructure. And I know we've had people. We have a story of a woman last year who came to a Waukesha Reads event, and she said, "Oh, I'm new in the community. I don't really do this kind of stuff, but this was kind of fun. I'm gonna go to some more." And she met someone there, and they became friends through this, and they went to all these events. So there she has a connection in the community because the library provided a way to connect.
Yeah,
that's great. Going a little bit more off the idea of having more, not littered, but more well-read communities. How would you encourage, or what tips or tricks do you have for people who want to read more, but they're struggling to kind of, get the foot in the door and start reading, be it not enough time or just haven't found something that interests them?
Yeah, well, I would say if someone's looking for a title, looking for something that they want to read, I can guarantee if they come to the library and ask the librarians, they will leave with something that they'll like. That is absolutely, that's one of our bread and butter skills, is we can connect you with things that you like.
Sounds like speed dating for books almost.
It is like that, but you're almost guaranteed success. I'll say you're guaranteed success. So it's a successful speed date. So come to the library, tell the librarian, here's something I've liked before, and we'll find you something.
That's great.
So that's great. And then as far as reading, like, I think it's finding a little time here and there to start. And it doesn't have to. You don't have to read War and Peace. You can read really anything. Start with some graphic novels, which are fun and very accessible, and those count.
Yeah.
Or do audiobooks; those count. That's reading too. So whatever fits with you want to do.
Yeah, I mean that's I'm not the most avid reader, but every now and then I'll pop on and just see what I can get for free from Amazon and say here's I think it was called like The Grumpy Potato or something like that, and it's a kid's book.
Yeah.
But now I've read at least like 3 in the series because I saw it once. Like, hey, you want to keep reading this one? I'm like, yeah, I'm reading kids' books, but
that counts.
It's something different.
Yeah, don't feel
I'm
shamed.
not putting this on my Goodreads. I'm like, yeah, this is hit my goal. I read The Cat in the Hat 3 times, but if that's what I need to do, it's something.
Right, exactly.
And our last, I guess, general question we have is, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Yeah, I don't know exactly how applicable, but I worked for Milwaukee for a long time, and one of the things that we did there while I was there was I was on the group of administrators who was starting to build some of their new buildings.
Mm-hmm.
They have several of the new buildings now. And the first one we did was in a community, the Villard Avenue neighborhood, and we were replacing an old library with a brand new one. And we were talking to the community, and one of the things that the director said was, in the library over here is where we're going to have the fireplace. And, someone said, do we really need a fireplace? And she was very clear. She said, you know what? This community deserves to have as good of things as any other community. So we're going to have a fireplace here. And I thought, hey, that's great. It's really it was empowering for me. Like, hey, people deserve to have as good as anywhere else. And so, we put a fireplace when we did our renovation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the kind of thing like, we're aiming to give the best possible service we can.
Yeah. Yeah, and it doesn't, that's the whole thing. Is I know there's plenty of people who are like, oh, it's, very cozy reading in front of a fireplace. And it just gives a different ambiance and kind of sets the mood for some of the books that you're reading. Reading a Victorian era book in, a coffee shop versus in front of a fireplace has very different feels and very different interactions with it.
I think every single video that I've done in the library, at one point we are in front of that fireplace.
It is a nice fixture to
it is. Well. It's just a nice cozy place, and you have all the windows in there too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and of course that part of the building is the original Carnegie Library. So that was built in 1903, opened in 1904, and that was Andrew Carnegie was this philanthropist who gave money to communities to build libraries, and his bargain, or as it was always to say, I'll give you X dollars and you have to match that to operate the library. And so he gave Waukesha $15,000. Is based on basically $2 per person. Waukesha was about 7,000 people at the time, and that was the building that they built originally. And so you see these Carnegie libraries all around. If you drive through Watertown, you can see a good example right on their main street with the pillars and the steps coming up, which is exactly how we used to have it. And then in a renovation in the 60s, the pillars and the steps were kind of removed, but it's the same building. So we really tried in the renovation to make that part feel like you're going to have kind of an old library feel when you come in here. So we were really happy with that.
And is that the same Carnegie as Carnegie Hall?
Carnegie Hall, yep.
Okay.
Yeah, all around. Yeah, and is more than I'll get the numbers wrong, more than 2,000 libraries in the country he founded. Yeah. So they're all over the place. And you'll see we took the design for the Waukesha Library. We had borrowed that plan from a library in Indiana, and then a library in Minnesota contacted us back in 1904. This is not something recent. And we sent the design on to them because libraries were new enough that it was like, how did you design this? How did you do this? And so designs were shared all around. It's interesting time.
And I imagine too, it's kind of nice. It's like, okay, you're roughly the same size. You have roughly the same budget. What can we build for?
Yeah.
What's the bang for our buck kind of thing?
It'd be interesting to see how they look today and how similar they might still be.
Right. Yeah. Well, a lot of them across the country are no longer libraries.
Sure.
And so there'll be, apartment houses or savings and loans or all sorts of things. But you'll drive through a community and you'll see like, that looks like a library. And if it does, it probably was.
Yeah.
So it'll have the pillars, it might have lions in front, the steps coming up. It's very, very symmetrical, very library-like.
Yeah.
It's either an old city hall, an old library, or a church.
Yeah. Or maybe the post office too.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. For our wrap up, we've got some rapid fire questions for you. This is kind of a this and that. You don't have to give too much of an explanation or defend yourself unless you feel like you need to.
Yeah.
But we'll be pretty quick with these. So, are you an early bird or a night owl?
My wife would say early bird for sure. I think that's probably true. Yeah.
Are you a coffee or tea drinker?
Coffee.
Favorite season of the year?
Right now, my favorite season is spring. Maybe in the middle of summer, I'd say fall.
Sure.
Yeah, more mild temperatures.
Yeah.
Not winter.
No,
Is the
not
answer.
right now. No.
What is your go-to comfort food?
Oh, pizza.
Any specific brand type toppings?
No, that's my problem. It's like any specific
pizza.
brand or topping.
Yeah, any pizza is good pizza.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like a pineapple or we have a place near our house where they sell macaroni and cheese pizza. So like I don't classic.
Yeah. Keep it simple.
Yeah.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Favorite holiday?
Yeah, maybe Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet or savory?
Savory.
Favorite sport to watch or play?
Yeah, I'm sort of a old guy, so it's the classic 3: baseball, basketball, football.
In that order?
No, not. Yeah, maybe baseball. Probably like to watch the most. Football I like to watch, but then I get tired of it. And basketball I like to read about and think about, but I don't watch as much.
Mm-hmm.
Favorite ice cream flavor?
Pistachio, maybe.
Good. Introvert or extrovert?
Introvert.
What is your favorite type of music?
My favorite type is the kind I listened to in college. So it's, 80s, new wave, somewhat punk music, stuff you'd hear on college radio back then.
Okay.
Nice.
Favorite color?
Blue, I guess.
Any specific shade of blue?
No.
Okay. And then do you prefer more chocolate candies or fruity candies?
I think chocolate.
Chocolate. All right. And that's the rapid fire questions.
All right.
You passed.
Yeah,
that's good.
100%. Yeah.
Wow, I got them all right.
It's weird when you write your own rubric.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to share about the library before we wrap up?
No, we are open daily. Come on in. Open 9 to 8:30 Monday through Thursday, 9 to 6 on Friday, 9 to 5 Saturday, 1 to 5 on Sundays. We have lots of great programs. Come enjoy our kitchen. Come enjoy our meetings. Come enjoy our books and friendly staff.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
All right. Thank you for having me.
And that's a wrap for another episode of Talkin' Waukesha. We hope you enjoyed diving into the heart of our city with us.
If you have a story to share or just want to say hello, reach out to us on social media at City of Waukesha on Facebook. We love hearing from our listeners.
Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review if you enjoyed the conversation. It really helps us spread the word.
As always, thanks for tuning in to Talkin' Waukesha, where every conversation springs to life.